motivated workforce is a competitive advantage in any organization. Motivating people, the ability to get them to achieve a higher level of performance, is a valuable skill for any leader, be it in a volunteer organization like Toastmasters or the corporate world. It would be nice if everybody was the same. That way we can all motivate everybody the same. However, people have different wants, desires, and goals. It is up to you as a leader to figure out those wants, to figure out how to motivate someone. My fellow Toastmasters and guests, motivating people is a skill like any other that can be built. And doing so will help give your team a competitive advantage that will lead them to success. But how do you build this skill? That's what I'm going to tell you in this speech. I'm going to give you how to set up the environment to create motivation, ways to motivate people, and then how to reward people properly. Let's start with the environment. A few things. People respond to reward rather than to punishment. What you would like to do is set up a system where people are working towards something rather than running away from something. Secondly, the wrong types of motivation can destroy team morale. If you motivate the wrong people for the wrong actions, your team will pick up on this and will lose interest. People like meaningful work. If you let your team members know why they are doing something, it's more likely, and why it is important to the team, it's more likely that they will be motivated to do it, even if it's a mundane task, as long as they feel important. Your team has to believe in you. They have to believe that you're going to do what you're going to say, be it reward them or punish them. And finally, you have to act like a leader. You are indecisive, you waffle. That's not going to build your team's morale. They're not going to believe in you. You have to make your decisions and stand by them. That concludes the environment portion of the talk. When you have this environment set up, when you start working these things into your team, this is the time to start getting people things that motivate them. So what can you use to motivate people? Money. Everybody likes a financial reward here and there, right? This isn't always possible in Toastmasters. It's more likely in the corporate world. Praise. Sometimes people just want to hear you say, you did a really good job on that. Please keep doing it. Give them feedback to let them know they're doing what you want them to do. As they say in the 1 Minute Manager, catch them doing something right. Public recognition. Some people like to see their names in lights, and that motivates them. It could be at a meeting, an assembly for Toastmasters, or at work, where you recognize someone for their achievements, or it could be an announcement on a company or a district newsletter, noting an accomplishment. More responsibility. People like to have meaningful work. When you give them this meaningful work in terms of more duties, this can be a way to get them to work harder. And finally, promotion. People like to feel they're making progress in their lives. Finding a way to promote them from where they are to a higher level is a means to get them to work harder. There are various other things you can do, but really they all fall into these categories. So those are some of the things you can do to motivate your team around you. How do you reward properly? Whenever you're giving feedback, particularly trying to motivate people, you should do it immediately. You want the behavior that you want to encourage to be recognized immediately. The longer you wait, the harder it is for the person in their mind to match up a reward with the action. Be specific. Tell them exactly what they did to get the praise, reward. Saying, hey, you did a good job on my report, doesn't really help. When you say, hey, all your figures look solid, you took in all the work I told you to take into account, and I felt confident presenting it to my bosses. That's specific. Make sure you match the reward with the action. Someone who completes a year-long project that's very complex deserves a much larger reward than someone who worked overtime a couple hours finishing up a report. Identify the behavior that you want to continue. When you're giving the reward, make sure you tell them exactly, again, be specific, match up the reward to the behavior and encourage it. Now, I did say you had reward rather than punish, but sometimes you have to punish because sometimes your team members are not going to perform. Sometimes they make mistakes or they do the wrong thing. Immediately recognize that. You don't have to be overbearing. There has to be some consequences so people don't continue to do the same thing. Sometimes we just be taking them to the side and informing them what they've done. That's the way you reward properly. That's basically the three things you need: setting up the environment, a means to reward, and then knowing the proper process when handing out your rewards or your punishments. I'm going to leave you with one more thought. When you look at your team members, look at their skills. If you can match them in positions that allow them to utilize their skills, this will most likely motivate them. It goes back to finding meaningful work for them. For instance, if you have a Toastmaster who wants to be an officer, and they're very gregarious, and they're great with public relations, and they can really draw people in, well, that's someone who's a candidate for your VP of Public Relations rather than your Secretary or Treasurer. Again, see the puzzle, put the pieces together to create a motivated volunteer or employee. My fellow Toastmasters and guests, as I told you, motivating people isn't magic. It's a skill like any other. If you practice some of the tips I've given you in this speech tonight, you will create a motivated team that will work hard for you, and by that way, lead you to success. Mr. Toastmaster.